Hi everyone, I'm Lisa Lee, and today here are my friends Cindy and Allison. Can you guys introduce yourself?
Hi guys, I'm Cindy. I'm a software engineer at a FAANG company. Nice to meet you guys.
Hi, I'm Allison. I'm also a software engineer, ex-software engineer at an ex-FAANG company as well.
Yay! Okay, so quick context of how we know each other. Allison actually knew Cindy through college. We all went to same college, USC. They met from college. I didn't know them prior to meeting them in SF. But yeah, like in SF, we got in touch with, our mutual friend. And that's how we met. And now we're just good friends. Thank you guys for agreeing to have this interview session with us. Well, although we say it's an interview, it's probably going to be just a little, chit chat about our experiences, our thoughts, and perspectives. Our topic today is pretty broad, but it's relatable. Our main focus is on the job market today and each of our definition of being proactive. Those two are the main topics for today. So since Allison is currently actively searching for her next role, she'll speak in terms of that. And for Cindy, she can speak her thoughts on the current situation as well as her experience in the past during undergrad of job searching. So first, how is the job market now? What's your experience with it?
Yeah, I guess I can start off with that, given that I was directly affected firsthand for the job market crash, especially in the tech realm a couple months ago. I will say that now it's better than 6 months ago because I got laid off in January of this year, 2023. Back then, it was dead silent in the tech world. All the recruiters were gone. No one was reaching out anymore. No one was able to even get through with referrals or anything. But currently, the job market is a little better compared to 6 months ago. There are some openings coming up. There's still more senior roles to be fair, but it is way better than before based on my experience of actively looking within the last 6 months.
Cindy, did you hear anything from people around you on this?
I feel like there's not a lot of positions opened because of the layoffs. Now they're getting a little picky with who they want to hire. And because of that, I feel like it's harder to get a job. And they're looking for someone who has the right skills and have the right amount of experience. It makes it really difficult. And that's why a lot of them want to hire more senior roles. Team has only maybe X amount of budget to hire someone. It makes more sense to hire a more senior person than to have two or maybe one lower level person.
I think recently I've seen a lot of contract roles coming out as well. Do you think
there are a lot of those?
Yeah, right? Do you think that's probably because of the current job market and how the situation is going
Yeah, I think those are just easy hot fixes for the mass amount that they laid off, given that was a drastic change for the company or even some teams. They just needed to patch up the holes. So I think that is a cheap option to do it in that way.
Then moving on, how does it directly affect you or impact others around you? Even as an experienced designer, it's really hard to find anything these days.
I feel like this is a question for Allison.
Yeah, I really went through it. I think it was a blessing in disguise in some ways or another, but it did bring me through a lot of emotions and decision making, a lot of everything. Honestly, my experience of it was that I realized work is work and no one should be dedicating their life to it because you're replaceable in every way possible. But it's hard though, because you obviously need money to survive. You need that income in some way or another. You need a purpose in your life. I'm not saying that work is your only purpose, but you kind of lose yourself after that.
Yeah.
But I would just say you're not doing anything good for yourself if you overstretch yourself for a job in that way. I think what I've learned coming out of it at the end, so my timeline of feelings was that I was happy that I got let go because I was oh, I'm free now. But then I was burdened by all my responsibilities after. And then after, I think at this point where I'm at right now, I think the biggest thing is just to know your worth and your skills and your contributions. If you if you don't feel like you are valued or you can't contribute as much as others around you, then maybe you're just in the wrong place, which is okay. And that's what I realized how I felt back in my old role. And I think that's why I said the let go is a blessing in disguise. But obviously there's other issues that you have to take care of, like responsibilities. But beyond that, I think the biggest thing is to know your worth.
Because this is our first role, or we just got out of college, right? And then that's why we kind of attach ourselves and correlate ourselves more with our current role. But as you gain more experience, you kind of know how to balance it out. Navigate. Or like it's not that you separate it completely, but it's more so like how to like live together. Speaking of that, Allison, then like you said that like coming out from it, you learned something different and you went through like different emotional experiences. Is there something that you look for differently when you're applying for a new role or when you're going through interviews? For example, like is there some specific questions you ask to the recruiter or hiring managers?
I think one of the biggest things that I'm gearing towards now, besides the company itself, what it does and what it stands for, is the community, the culture. And culture does encompass a lot of things, right? From work-life balance to, the age of the people you're working with, how seasoned they are, what they value as like work or hard work. But anything within that realm, I think is something that I was lacking before, which is something I'm looking for in the future. And I think what's hard about culture is that you can't just like make a checklist of what you want and expect a company to fit into that role. I think it also has to do with the fit within the interview process beyond the technical scope.
How do you recognize that? How do you know like, oh, this company and like, me, like, I think we could be a good fit, or this is like something that I'm looking for? Like, how do you know that?
I personally try to be as not robotic in my interviews. So a lot of the interviews I do are all obviously tech interviews, like coding challenges, system design. And if you have no personality in there, you're not going to be able to like communicate with them in a way that you expect to be communicating with when you're working with them. So when I do interview with them, I do show more personality, if you will, than like just getting into like getting the interview done and saying goodbye. Like I try to ask personal questions with them. I try to ask their opinions, their thoughts on a lot of things that you probably wouldn't hear otherwise. So it's not really about the company, it's about them.
I guess we can ask this question. What is your definition of being proactive? Can you give us an example, especially how you were able to succeed in the job search during undergrad?
Yeah, I can talk about at least my undergrad experience and like what kind of things that I did to be proactive. I started preparing my job search for a full-time job in the summer, and then I wrote out a plan of what kind of like leak code questions that I want to tackle. I divided up into like topics, and I think that was the key important thing to do, because a lot of people would just kind of do questions and like kind of it's like random questions, and I don't think it really helps because you need to develop some sort of pattern or like understanding of how to solve certain things. After I did all the topics and understand each like topics a lot better, school started, and then I started applying for companies, like for jobs. And then I would kind of prioritize that a little bit more than my work. It was quite difficult. So sometimes I would spend like maybe 3-4 hours studying for interviews every day just so that I just can answer the questions better, Then I would wait for the interviews to come. And then I would specialize, or I would focus my time into what questions I need to brush up on. Maybe like this company likes to ask like this type of question and do those types of questions. A lot of it is more like grinding, a lot of like making sure you understand things deeply, because you can't memorize things. And if you try to memorize, it doesn't really work well. And I think how I land my job was I felt very lucky. So
I do think it is a numbers game too, I think.
Yeah, it is a kind of numbers game, because depending on who you interview with and what the questions are going to be, it really, really depends how, how the outcome would be. Allison, you have anything to say?
For my part-time job, I teach students, college students, how to interview properly to get their foot into the tech world. And the biggest questions I've been getting, even starting from last summer, was, are we doomed? Like, should I be studying this realm anymore? Is there competition out there? I think this is a good question because you can't answer if they're doomed or not, but there's one thing that they can take control of, right? And it's being proactive. And I gave them 3 points on how to maintain being proactive. The first one was habits. I think good habits build for good investment on yourself. Practicing lots and retain the skills you have today, you'll never know when they'll come in handy. So that kind of goes into what Cindy was saying, how she every day she would do some problems and really practice on it rather than memorize and fully understand it. When you do encounter something of a similar sort, you can, tackle it without really thinking because you put in the time beforehand. And then the second thing I mentioned was always be prepared. The worst feeling for a test, is knowing that you just reviewed something or reviewed a question and you know the answer in the back of your head, but you can't recall it, right? And you don't want this to happen when you have an interview. Practice, practice over and over again for leak code questions or studying, system design patterns or something. And then the last thing I tell them is mindset is the biggest thing of not giving up. Just because it's hard to, 1, tackle a leak code question, or 2, enter the tech field, or 3, knowing how competitive the industry is right now doesn't mean you should give up prematurely. I think, those 3 things is what I've told my students to remain proactive, especially in a time of uncertainty going through the interview process and stuff.
It's a really good point. I think especially because I'm sure after COVID happened, it's a lot harder than what we experienced for the students who are about to graduate, who have graduated recently. So yeah, I think being proactive is definitely, and like what you said, the mindset, I think that's very important so that you keep yourself motivated and you don't give up even in this kind of situation. And maybe you guys can speak on that as well. I think I heard it way long time ago from Cindy that you guys went to Miami, Florida for an event, right?
Yeah, Grace Hopper. Yeah, it's kind of crazy because I think the tickets to get there was pretty expensive.
High hundreds. It was across country.
So you guys would probably highly recommend that.
Definitely. I think if anything, it's empowering to go, and it's a lot of open doors opportunities, and just seeing people in the same trajectory as you with the same interests, the same passion, drive, and determination. It's a lot. I feel that's enough for you to know that you're in the right place.
Can you guys maybe speak a little in more detail of what this event is and who it is for and what you guys do there?
Yeah, well, it's Grace Hopper is basically for women in tech. And a lot of students would actually go there to see different people talk, and it's a huge job fair.
Networking as well.
It's also a interview ground. So sometimes you do interviews there. If you don't get interviews there, it's okay because they can still call you back, which is what happened in my case. They looked at my resume after the event and then called me a week or 2 after. It's quite crazy because I thought, oh man, I didn't get anything or something like that. But then it just came.
Yeah. I think what a lot of people view it as is a huge career fair, a huge interview opportunity, networking. People are pretty aggressive about that in that way. I think what is underrated for that is also just the talks. I think they're just very inspiring to sit through and see the different realms of tech there is, something you may not be studying or something you had no idea exist as well.
That's also a good point to mention about attending these kind of events. That's part of being proactive as well, right? Not only is it about practicing for interviews that's going to happen in the future, or practicing so that you will know what to do during technical interviews or whatnot, but it's also actions. You have to meet people in order to get anything, right? I think that is definitely another good way of being proactive.
You just got to be aggressive. You can't say you want to do something, without working on it. Like, you have to do something about something.
Yeah.
It's not like,
That's so true. What are you currently doing to overcome it, this job market right now? And what can others, specifically recent grads or people transitioning into a different field, do?
So I feel like for the first part, I think it's basically what we were talking about with the whole proactive thing. You can't really change anything. You can't do more things because also it's partly luck, right? Depending on how many positions there are opened and things like that. And for people transferring or not transferring, but transitioning into the software engineering field, I think with the whole like chat GPT out and just not having a lot of positions opened, it could feel a little rough maybe for someone that doesn't have a software engineering background or maybe even like a engineering background. I would suggest to find something that you really want to be good at. So whether it's like doing like a full stack thing or back end, front end, writing iOS apps or whatever, be good at one thing and claim that, because it's really difficult to be good at everything. It's better to say that you're good at one thing than be good at little things, and then when you're in the interview you don't really know what you want, or they can feel it. They can feel your vibe that you know. Allison?
Yeah, I think the hardest thing for me right now is like obviously receiving a rejection, and I guess like your question kind of falls into like, how do you get over like, I don't know, all the humps that you would encounter for transitioning or like getting whatever you want. I think the biggest thing here, I think it's like kind of taking a step back, is know what you want. In terms of the product, the tech realm, the kind of people you want to work with, the type of work style you want, where you want to be, even location wise. I think that's one of the biggest things for me. Don't just say you want to work as a software engineer for FAANG. I think it's good to know that what you want to do within that realm. What kind of impact do you want to make? What are you passionate about? And then after that, you just have to trust the process, honestly, of a mutual decision between you and the company. And by trust the process, I don't mean like hang back and like wait for something to come. It's obviously everything we talked about on the proactive side, but like backtracking to like saying, if a company doesn't want you, then you obviously don't want to work at somewhere like that either. It's very, very neutral.
What can we apply from then undergrad to now as experienced professionals?
Good question, Lisa. I think the biggest thing is what Cindy and I discussed a couple questions ago about habits and doing something for the purpose of doing it and not just to check it off. So thoroughly think through something can truly be applied to, everyday life and every workday thing, or every workday activity that you're doing, especially because I think the biggest thing for me right now is my interviews entail system design, questions that I've never done before. I've never learned how to do this in school. This is purely like industry experience here. And what I realized when I'm learning this stuff on my own is that I still have to apply the way I learn things, in terms of like fully understanding it, not just like glossing over it, so that I can apply it to different realms out of experience. Yeah, I think that's the biggest thing. I think that's something you're going to hear over and over again too.
Yeah, I can piggyback on that too. This is like something that I actually learned, like the most important thing I learned working at my company is that you gotta specialize at least in one thing and be an expert in it. And I think my manager, he got a PhD in computer science from Stanford, so he's like pretty good in that field, He always constantly tells me that you gotta be really, really good in one thing and just like keep asking all these different questions to get good at it. And I think that's kind of hard. I know this is like kind of cliche. It's like, oh, like of course that's like obvious, but for some reason, like when I was in undergrad, that didn't really click to me, because when I was doing all the leak code questions, I was just doing it because it's like, yeah, I gotta do it. But really, like, if you spend that time wanting to be good at it, you'll naturally be good at anything that you would do.
Definitely. Yeah. So, to wrap it up, although we can't say specifically which company you guys work for or worked for, a lot of people out there, FAANG companies are their dream companies and dream jobs. So for those people, do you guys have any advice on how to get hired?
I think this is gonna pull us away from the answer we're looking for the specific question, but I want to say, don't let this dream blindside you from your true passion or your true calling or your interests and whatnot, because work is work. Again, big companies, they don't care about you, to be honest, right? But to answer the question, circling back, to get in, it really is a numbers game and luck and trying over and over again in that way. Because I do have numbers for you here. Before I got this role, I did get 4 internship rejections and 2 full-time role rejections for the same company.
Oh, I've applied many times for my company.
And it's also just luck because for Cindy's company, I've also applied multiple times. I think starting sophomore year, I wouldn't say I have at least 15 to 20 rejections from that company. And I still haven't gotten a chance to even talk to a recruiter other than Grace Hopper. So, but it is true about a numbers game, because if I do this for maybe the rest of my life, hopefully maybe I will get one response, you know. So.
I agree with what Allison has said. Don't let this be something that would stop you. You know, if you really like doing software engineering, just do it because you like doing it.
Yeah, and last thing I want to say, we did mention like, a lot of it is luck, a lot of it is a numbers game, and then from the beginning we also talk about how to be proactive. This is one quote that I think is really helpful, where it says, luck is what happens when preparation meets opportunity. And that's exactly what we just talked about from end to end here, about what is being proactive, what is preparation, what kind of opportunities that we can get ourselves into, you know, like Grace Hopper, networking events, panelists and stuff. And then obviously the luck part where we can't handle. But if we do the two of being proactive and being prepared, then when luck comes around, it will happen.
That's true.
Yep. Amen.
That's a good wrap up. Yeah. Thank you so much, you guys, for your time today. I really appreciate it, and I hope you guys enjoyed it as well.
Of course.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Lisa.
It's not like we're getting forced into it. Just kidding.
Half forced.